and we can get
All of you
started.
at the same time.
So we're going to probably remain muted. Have yourself muted for when do you have a question, Josh? Or are you just fixing your light? Okay. Probably remain muted if you aren't saying anything, just to avoid background noise, because it can get really feedbacky really quickly. So Jen is going to start us off on our agenda. I hope you all had a chance to look at that agenda earlier this week. If not, there's also a link to it in the chat. So if you go down to the bottom of the window, there's a little speech bubble that says chat. You can open up a side panel that will have the chat in it. Feel free to ask questions either by unmuting yourself and asking, or you can enter them in the chat if you don't want to worry about interrupting and lag and things like that. So I think you can take it away, Jen.
If I speak at this level, can everybody hear me okay? Okay.
I can hear you.
I'm seeing a lot of nods. That's great. Well, as you might have seen from the annual report, year, everybody got set up pretty early on and got their imaging station, and everybody's been making excellent progress imaging, which is fantastic. The word on the street is together TCN, which I just made up, but it's kind of true. Overall, we had over 350 people that were involved in some way at your institution, or transcribing, and that's really exciting. We also launched several Notes from Nature's expeditions. These are expeditions in which images of the labels are put up online and crowdsourced, and then people fill in fields to transcribe those labeled data. And those expeditions, if you're interested in running them because you feel behind in your transcription duties, you should send Katie and I an email. But those are mostly being run for institutions that have not digitized at all and have some pretty lofty transcription goals associated with this project. And so that is underway. Josh Durr is about to start one. And part of the reason we wanted to have this meeting was to get everybody on the same page associated with some of the back end developments that have been happening as part of this project. So you might not know it, but Katie, so you all know Katie, and Jason's based at Berkeley. And then maybe for the first time, you guys are seeing Ed Gilbert there on the screen. And so Ed is the creator and mastermind behind Symbiota. And Ed, Katie, Jason, and I meet about weekly, or at least we did for the last year, to try to get the portal set up. And the portal is really the backbone upon which this whole project hinges. And so over the past year, we've had to make a lot of decisions about how that portal functions, what it looks like, and then we had to make decisions about how to prioritize development of certain features in that portal. As a result of that portal getting instituted, all of you now have your data shared in CCH2, but also we were able to bring in 21 additional institutions. And so it's all 22 of us and then 21 additional. So now we have over 40 people all serving their data in the CCH2. Many institutions serve that data live, and then there's a handful that are snapshot collections. And the reason why it was so important to get everybody in there is because, as you guys have heard, CCH1 will be populated eventually with data from CCH2. So we've put in a huge amount of effort to get that portal functioning the way we want it to and get all the data that we want to have in there. And so here we are at the end of year one and now beginning on year two. So you can see in the agenda, I've dropped the figure of everybody's progress. And it might be a nice thing to do to scroll down actually a little bit. And I put a table in there just to remind everybody what your institutional targets are. And you can compare that with where you think you are. And so what I'm showing in that chart is basically what we said in the grant we would produce, the number of images each school would contribute, and then some of those, for the vast majority of these, you already have database records and you're just producing an image and then linking that image to the database record in the portal. But some of you have transcription targets, and so the numbers in the right-hand side of the column, those are, you're not only producing images of those, and maybe somebody just deleted it, so you might want to undo. Oh no, it just jumped to the next page.
Sorry, I added a new figure that was in the August quarterly report.
Yeah. So those are the transcription and images numbers. So I started to go through and write everybody's year 2 goal down, and then I realized that was silly, and these are the target numbers, and so all of you sort of know where you stand in relation to those. Really successful year. With year 1 really being dominated by getting the portal up and running and then all of the data migrated, now maybe we can just hit our stride this year with focusing the vast majority of our energy into imaging. But the other aspect of this project that Katie, Jason, Ed, and I are all turning our attention to is the phenological scoring component. So that the phenological scoring, they're essentially annotations on your records that tell somebody if it has flower buds, open flowers, or fruits on the sheet. And that's not really going to get rolled out until years 3 and 4, but our plan is to initiate that this year in year 2. And so we held the workshop at the botany meeting. Some of you were at that, where we highlighted some of the features in Symbiota that are being developed to accommodate that scoring. And so you will see those features become instituted in our portal soon. And I think I might be the gun, but anyway, that's where we're at right now. So we have some focus on the phenological scoring, and then everybody's just really imaging in years 2 and 3. And the plan is that most of the imaging will be done by the end of year 3. And then we focus the final year on the remaining transcriptions, georeferencing, and phenological scoring. Are there any general questions from anybody before we move into the specific agenda items? And feel free to type in the chat or jump in. Okay, unless we've gotten a lot of questions from folks about the taxonomy tables in Symbiota and how they work. And so we thought we'd spend a little bit of time addressing the back end of the taxonomy tables within the portal. So Jason, take it away.
So I've written down a bunch of notes that I'll just be reading from, so that, or there to remind me what to say in order, so that it doesn't come out totally confusing, because this is a complicated process on how it has come about, although maintaining it from now on is not going to be as complicated once it's completely set up. This current CCH2 website actually dates all the way back to when the first 2 or 3 months that I've started working here in the fall of 2016. And this was before we had actually even started talking about reinitiating the phenology grant. And so the National Park Service had some money, and the National Park Service runs a Symbiota portal that is the National Public Lands portal, and they wanted CCH2, they wanted CCH data into their portal and to be able to create checklists. And so they had some extra money, paid Ben Brandt to come to and log into the Berkeley servers and set up the first version of this website that we now call CCH2. And at that time, I got some instruction from Ed Gilbert to create the taxon table. And this was a previous database version of Symbiota in which IDIS was being used. And so at that time, IDIS had a data structure that you could modify and add to Symbiota. And so I took that from IDIS and uploaded it. And so that makes the basis of our taxonomic thesaurus, was that original upload back in the December of 2016 after Ben Brandt had set the server up and after Ed had trained me. And basically from then till when we started doing, and we got, started first loading the first of the CCH1 data into CCH2, there was really no changes to the taxon thesaurus. Pretty soon we started, in 2017, we started really focusing on this grant. So it was clear that I didn't need to go at that point into uploading data myself into a kind of a freeware version of CCH2 in which I was the only person adding data to and such, and as a place that we could deposit people's data into CCH2 in order for there to be an actual database structure for the data to be ported to CCH1 and for people to add their data to. But luckily, we got a grant, and so a lot of the things I was planning didn't come to fruition, and I've had a lot more help than doing this all by myself. And I can't imagine trying to do what we have done all by myself. It's been quite of a learning process. And so when Ed Gilbert was brought in the fall of 2018, the server was transferred in bulk to the iDig Bio servers, and with that, the taxon table. And at that point, we started adding new records to the taxon table in the new structure. And the new structure is one in which uses catalog of life as the background data pulling thesaurus. We don't have a full upload of any one of these programs. Basically, it's an on-need service in which when there's a name that needs to be populated, there are tools within Symbiota that we can get to later that brings names in from catalog of life. And there are options and such to use Tropicos, but Ed has cautioned us in assigning Tropicos as one of the data sources. And you can see that in the notes here with the term API. The API is software that allows your database to query a database on another server that has a different structure. So basically, that the data goes into the right fields. Without an API, you wouldn't be able to communicate with another database and pull records in there. So in Tropicos' API, they do not have accepted names versus synonyms. So anything that you pull over there automatically gets put into the Symbiota as an accepted name, and that can cause issues. You have to reassign all of the synonyms that you want to be as a synonym manually. Versus Catalog of Life has a structure in which it has a definite set of accepted names and synonyms. So during our meeting yesterday, we had talked about going over some of showing the data cleaning tools. Does Katie want to show that OBI's data cleaning tools on a live server so that we can go over the parts of what we're talking about when we're talking about pulling the data from Catalog of Life?
Yeah, and I'll just jump in here also to say that, so even though our taxonomy table was originally pulled from the Catalog of Life, what Jason has been spending a huge amount of his time on is getting the flora, and that is not yet up. Right now, our taxonomy table is sort of a mess and is populated by the names that are on the sheets that you've contributed. And then it compares the names on your specimens to the Catalog of Life. Once Jason adds all our taxonomy and the synonymy, then it'll be a little bit clearer, but we're not quite at that stage yet.
Yeah, and I have some more details about that a little later after we do the demo.
Katie, are you going to share your screen?
Sure thing. So the data cleaning tools, this is just one of the data cleaning tools that I'm going to be showing you. And this is it's really helpful for looking for misspellings and such. So I'm going to go into my administrator control panel. So I went basically my profile, specimen management, collection management, and then these are going to be in the administration control panel. So you have to have administrator access to do these. They're in data cleaning tools. And then they're down at the bottom in the taxonomy, the taxonomic cleaning tools. So I'm going to go to analyze taxonomic names. And so this is telling me that I have 121 specimens for which CCH2 could not find a scientific name in the taxonomic thesaurus to map that specimen to. So I'm going to say, okay, show me what those are. And I'm going to say, I'm only going to look at the first 5, for example. And my taxonomic resource is going to be Catalog of Life. In the future, this might not be visible, so if you don't see that, don't worry. And I'm going to select semi-manual because I want to be able to approve what those records are mapped to. And then I'm going to say analyze taxonomic names. It's going to take a little while. And what it's going to do is say, okay, I found Achnantherum californicum. I don't know what that is. So I'm going to look in Catalog of Life for that name. Okay, I found something that's related. Do you want to remap to this taxon? And for things like this, no, I don't want to, because I don't want to make a taxonomic decision based on that right now. You could if you are the curator and you say, okay, I do actually want to annotate this specimen to be Occidental subspecies californicum. Or you can just move on. You don't have to fix, quote unquote, each one of these, but they're just really useful for finding issues like, well, I've done this a lot for ours, so ours is pretty clean. But if you found something that said like anemone with a Y patens, then you'll be able to see it in this list that comes up, and you can say, oh, I know it's supposed to be this taxon. You remap, and then it will just automatically rename that specimen with that name. If you want to make sure that you annotate them physically, you can also come up here and click on the name. So this is going to show you how many specimens have that exact name. You click on that number of specimens and you can open it up and actually look at those occurrences. So those records in your portal. And then if you want to flag them for an annotation, you can come into the determination history and then say, okay, I'm going to add a certain name. And then you can click add to annotation print queue. so that you know in the future that I need to print an annotation for that physical specimen and go and put it on the physical specimen. But for the time being, the record is accurate in my collection. I would only do that when you are doing kind of batch taxonomic editing, but for like misspellings and such, I don't know if that's necessary. Sorry, you had a comment, Jen?
Oh, I was just saying, when people enter names that aren't in the thesaurus, they don't automatically get added to the thesaurus until you update your taxonomy, which might be the next link that Katie is about to show you.
No, this is the tool that does that.
So Jason, when he's editing the taxonomic thesaurus in the backend, can see all the names that you have in your database that you entered, and you got a little warning that said, this isn't in the taxonomic thesaurus. And you said, that's okay. By adding it, now it appears there. And then Jason does a lot of work to reconcile those names.
Yeah, when this tool finds a name that's in Catalog of Life, it will say, see, there's something wrong with Catalog Life's record for Achnathrem californicum. So I don't know what targeted taxon return does not exist, but something's missing in their database, so it's not added. But when it does successfully, when their record has all of the appropriate fields, it will say it was added to our database, and it will also pull, if it's a synonym, it will pull the accepted name and add it. If it's an accepted and the synonym both, and if it's just an accepted name, it'll pull that. But it writes little notes on there that tells you which ones are which and what it's added. And in the background, in the database itself, there's a field that tells you where each one of these names came from. So I know when I'm doing my work in the background, which names have been added by which service. And I treat different ones as different quality issues. And so since 2018, about 36,000 new names have been added from Catalog of Life into the taxonomic thesaurus, and the thesaurus from 2016 had 131,000 vascular plant names in it. And so for the first 6 months, every time we would load a new collection, I would run through that based on Ed's suggestion, and have it just add the new names that it found. And at that time, we didn't really have an idea how much it was the Catalog of Life and the original taxon table was divergent in various ways from other resources. But now that we have been doing this for about 6 months, I have a very good idea which ones are problems and which ones aren't. For example, Catalog of Life has a lot of missing spaces in the authority names. So you might have M.E. Jones won't have any spaces between the M period, E period, or even between the period and the J in Jones in some cases. I'm not sure why that is. I mean, even IPNI will do that. When you copy their names individually and put it in a table, their spaces will be missing and not formatted that way. So people have been talking about how to fix errors in this, and fixing authorities to where that they would like to show them on their own personal labels. And so we can have discussions about that. I fix these things when I find them to match Tropicos and the E flora, but with 50,000 names, it's hard to fix every single problem very quickly. So it's one of these ongoing issues that is addressed periodically. So another thing that I have been doing, since I found that a catalog of life has a little bit more of a high degree of errors and missing spaces and various other things than I was comfortable with, is I'm using what's the bulk taxon editor for this symbiota, and adding names genus by genus into the database from Tropicos and the plant list. And I've chosen the plant list because it also has names from IPNI. Not everything is in Tropicos. There's a bunch of names that are in UC JEPs that are not in Tropicos, and we have specimens and types for it. And the only way to find those names is through the plant list. So, let's see. Another one of the issues people have emailed me about the taxon thesaurus is about the family names and some of the other accepted names versus synonym issues, and how some of them have throughout a genus might be assigned to 2 or more different families. Boraginaceae is an example of that. Liliaceae and Themidaceae and Asparagaceae are another example. When you, for example, one of the issues that someone, I think from UC Davis, had an issue with was that Heliotropium was in Heliotropaceae and not Boraginaceae, or Hydrophalaceae. And that is a issue with what database has what family in it. You know, as the UC JEPs has Heliotropium and Boraginaceae, but Catalog of Life has it under Heliotropaceae. So when we've used the tool that Katie showed you to add Heliotropium taxa in there, those get added to Heliotropaceae, where some of the others in that genus that were added by other means are in either Boraginaceae or Hydrophalaceae. So there's a lot of cleanup that I have to constantly do during this uploading process, in order to at least make the California taxa the same families. And so for that, the eFlora is the guidelines for doing that. Another one is Brodia and Asparagaceae versus Themidaceae. Brodia is in Asparagaceae and Tropicos, and I uploaded that from Tropicos, and so some of those names got into Asparagaceae in Catalog of Life and Tropicos, versus the names that I'll be adding with the eFlora later will be in Themidaceae, and I'll have to fix the ones that are already found in the database to Themidaceae. But the issue here long term is that because there are differences between the eFlora and the families and these online resources, what families get assigned to them, there is going to be, as long as people are adding new names using the taxon tool that Katie showed, we're going to have different family assignments in certain very research-heavy groups where people don't agree what family they belong to. So it's, I encourage people to email me when they find a problem, because it's very easy for me to change these. If you say, we would like this to be into that family, I can easily make that change. And I've been doing that for people who have brought those issues up to me. Very similar to what I would do. It's part of my same job as I was doing in CCH1. Only thing is, in CCH2, this is much easier. It doesn't require a full compile of the entire database to change these taxon information, because the taxon table and thesaurus is its own resource. And so when you change the family names and such, that changes the name in the taxon thesaurus. But what it doesn't do is change the name in your own table, in your own collection. There were certain features that used to do that, but other people didn't. Collections were concerned that we were changing the family names that they wanted to have with their specimens. So we had to turn that off. So there is some maintenance that has to be done, not only on my part, but on collections part, that if you find a collection in a specimen in your collection that has the wrong family, it may have been changed in the taxon thesaurus already. And when I make those changes, that only changes for new records and changes for queries. It doesn't fix old records. So we will be needing some regular within collection editing of people's families and authorities also. And
add something there.
Pardon?
I just wanted to add a note there that really the taxonomic work done at each collection is going to be much more effective once Jason finishes the revisions to the taxonomic thesaurus. So there isn't a lot of action for you to take right at this moment. But then I also wanted to say that the reason why this is important, even for snapshot collections, is it affects the way that your searches are conducted. So if you search a taxon name, what you hope is that you have a really great thesaurus that references all the synonyms and that you get all the records you want to see. And so it's really about the functionality of searching for records within the collection. So it does apply to all of us, even though it may seem like it's mostly it's tasks to do within the portal for live collections once we get the thesaurus updated.
So what I'm currently working on as a regular update weekly is that UC JEPS has our in-home database is CSpace, and CSpace has a controlled vocabulary that the taxon names are only allowed if you find them in the database. And for the most part, all of our California material has been highly curated, so it's fairly accurate. I don't find misspellings necessarily when I go to use that taxon tool on UC JEPS specimens. What I do find is species that are missing that I have added to CSpace that need to be added to CCH2. So I'm using UC JEPS as a guideline for each one of the genera that I pull from the plant list or Tropicos, pull all of the species found in those groups, and then add them in bulk. And to date, I have added 1,321 from the plant list and 8,748 new names from Tropicos. And that's work is ongoing. I'm still in the A's in UC JEPS. Acacia is the next big one. There's a lot of conflicting names in Acacia. There's a lot of names that have already been added, so I have to reconcile those conflicts before the new records can be added. The next step is, and this has been taking me a number of years to actually even accomplish, I started this before we even were working on this grant, is deconstructing CCH1's original taxonomy table. And without going into any kind of gory details, it's a very complicated thing. It's very difficult to work with. It's easy to make errors in. And as such, it's taken me quite some time to deconstruct it and reconstruct it in a usable fashion in order to be able to map names into and find what is already in CCH2 so that I can add new records. The goal here is to make the searches in CCH1 and CCH2 as identical as possible. You come up with the same taxon names if you do searches in either one. So the first step is to bring all of the names from CCH1 into CCH2. And this table was very, had a lot of work. I can't express how much work that Dick Moe did to create this table. There are thousands and thousands of names that are in this table that are not even in the eFlora. He created this table before the eFlora existed, before the eFlora synonymy table existed. And I found very few errors in it as far as the spelling goes. the regular genus and species. So there are about 10,000 plus records in there that I'm going to be adding to CCH2 very soon. I have about 2,000 names that are already in CCH2 that I have to reconcile and fix the errors with, and so that they match what was in CCH1. After which, I'll be, again, comparing the synonymy and accepted names from the eFlora with this next version of CCH2's taxon thesaurus to find out how many names are still missing after I've done this. And periodically, as we update the eFlora, new taxon names and new changes will need to be made. For example, if anybody has done any searches in CCH1, you know that the Mimulus and Phrymaceae situation doesn't come up right with the right synonyms and such in CCH1 because I never updated that. And so those updates will need to be made in CCH2. Just with some of the other things we've been talking about, that's just the California synonymy. The out of California Mimulus versus Erythranthe issues are another issue entirely, and those are brought in based on what is listed in Tropicos and Catalog of Life. I don't know what they're using as accepted names and such, and so there might be a mixture of Mimulus accepted and Erythranthe accepted for out-of-state specimens for some time, because I'm basically just concentrating at this point on making sure accepted in synonyms in California are treated. So,
okay, thanks, Jason.
I think that's it to my notes. Any questions or comments?
Everybody feel good about that? And it's worth noting that we assign people various permissions, and there's a permission called super admin, which is what Ed, Jason, Katie, and I have to the entire CCH portal, and we can assign taxonomic thesaurus editors. And currently it's just us, but if you were really fired up about helping Jason with that, then we could talk about giving you that status, and then you could work in the taxonomic thesaurus. But for now, Jason has it handled, and it will be updated soon with the eFlora taxonomy. So I'll say something about, I've gotten a lot of emails then. Jason, thank you, by the way, for all the work that you're doing on the taxonomy thesaurus. So the next item on the agenda is label making. Many of you have expressed a desire to have more label making features within the portal, and the answer to that is that that's not currently under development at this time. However, one feature that I did not think about or appreciate very well is that you can, when you're on the label making screen, you can download all the labels that you want to make and the numbers of each label that you want to make as a CSV file, and then use that in your mail merge. So many of you might have had a workflow for using mail merge for your various label making tasks. And so if that was you, then downloading it as a CSV might be faster than downloading as a Word document and then editing that Word document to make your labels. So in the future, the goal is that you could have various label profiles where you save your headers and your suffixes, but right now that is not under development. Anybody want to say anything else about labels, label making within the portal?
Jen, we just take what is generated and modify it in Word. Just with, it's kind of weird. We create it, convert everything to a table, then back to a text. We change the margins because it won't fit our printer otherwise. And we just make it one font type and one font size, usually times 10, I think, for labels. So it would be nice to have that done automatically, but it's not that big an issue because it's pretty quick for us. The one thing you could do is make the margins bigger. They come out as 0.25 inches and it won't print in those prints. That's all.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, obviously that would be a great addition to Symbiota's functionality in the future.
If someone has a mail merge template and they share it, we could map it to the table, and just as an example of how that's done. And if anyone else wants to create, they could use that template to create their own templates.
Yeah, because the advantage of doing that is that every time you export that table, all the headers are the same. And so you could adjust your fonts and have, make sure your scientific name's italicized and all that sort of stuff with a mail merge template document. And
you could create the exact label format that you want for your institution.
Right.
Harry asks, can we get the full name with authority in the CSV in one field?
We can.
I think it's because it usually goes in two different fields.
Well, when people put out a label, a lot of times they want the scientific name italicized, but not the author.
Mm-hmm.
And be able to do that with a mail merge, you need to have those as separate fields. But then within the template, there's little tricks on how to concatenate them and make them italicized.
So it sounds like it's kind of easier to keep it in different fields. And if you want it in the same field, I know you can concatenate those fields in the CSV.
I could add it to the output though.
Okay. So go on the list.
Terry, maybe that's something in the future, like when we have our next follow-up meeting with.
Can't hear you very well.
I was just saying, Terry at UC Davis has been dealing with these label issues quite a bit. And so, Terry, it might be good if you show us your workflow the next time we have a private meeting. And so then we can really understand how to make that as functional as possible. Okay, then the other thing that's come up is that now that we have this portal, whether you know it or not, because all of our data is in the portal, that means that our records can talk to each other. And so I wanted Katie to do an overview of how you search for duplicate records within the portal. And this really came up because I just took a set of duplicate specimens and I sent them to UC Santa Cruz as a gift. And I included a note in that gift that said, all of these data are already in the CCH2. To get them into your database, you just need to look for the Dupes. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody is familiar with how to look up duplicate record information, and Katie's going to demonstrate how to do that.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so here's just an occurrence page. So there are two different types of dupes that you might consider when you are dealing with your collection. First, there's for collections that have issues with getting their images connected to their records, there's a certain type of duplicate that can be found by looking for other catalog numbers. So for example, now these aren't botanical duplicates, these are just how you would look for it. Does that record exist in my own database and it's not connected to this skeletal record? So that's one dupe. But what Jen is talking about is botanical duplicates, and those can be across collections in CCH2. And to search for duplicates, there's this Dupes button. And to look for dupes, there has to be some information in the collector and number fields, and ideally the date field too. So if I enter data into collector, number, and date, I can click the Dupes button. And then can you see the window that popped up?
The pop-up's not showing. So
Okay,
all your pop-ups aren't showing.
here we go. Can you see this
Yep.
now? Okay. So here's what will pop up. And it looks like I'm only finding duplicates that are in my own collection because maybe there are no duplicates of Jan Barber specimens in other collections, but you can see that it has looked for specimens that were collected on the same date or around the same number by the same collector. So here's Jan Barber's 144, 145, 147, etc. But, oops. Let me bring this back up. But say we went to something more general. If I'm looking for, hold on, I'm having some browser issues. Here we go. We're looking for Hoover 1000. There I can see, okay, Jepson has Hoover 1000.
Can't see the pop-up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks for reminding me. Here's the new pop-up. Here's the pop-up that shows up. UC Jeps has a Hoover 1000. California Academy has a Hoover 1000. And then what I can do, if I'm trying to enter a new record, I can say, hey, take all the data that UC Jeps has already so laboriously transcribed and put those in my own records. So if I click transfer to empty records, or sorry, transfer to empty fields, then
If they're a true duplicate, you would almost always click transfer all fields.
correct.
Yeah.
Then it will put, see all these blue fields are all the data that have been added when importing. And sometimes those data are not perfect and you might want to edit them before you save your record, but it's a great place to start.
So especially for those collections that have a lot of transcription to do, it might be that because there's been such a history of duplicate sharing in California, that you don't need to transcribe the label perfectly, and you should always look for duplicates first by entering the collector and the collector number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just saves you a lot of time. It's easier to just fix one or two things than have to type out an entire locality. Any questions on that?
How do I share my screen? Can I share my screen?
Who's talking?
I'm talking. Jen's talking. How do
Oh, okay.
Down, there's a bar at the bottom. It says share. If you click on that,
Great.
it'll give you a bunch of options.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And just pick the screen, the first option.
So the next agenda item is the taxonomic scope of the CCH2. And there were some emails that went around about this early on. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
From the home page, if you click search collections, you'll come to this screen. And what you will notice is that the CCH2 contains an algae collection from Catalina Island Conservancy. It contains some bryophyte collections from various institutions. It's got some lichens in it. And the vast majority of the CCH2 is are vascular plant collections. And so All of these, the algae, bryophytes, and lichen data are all snapshots records from those collections into the CCH2. And we've elected to put them on the top of the search records homepage, so that if you're using CCH2 to search vascular plants within an area, like if you're using the map feature where you draw a circle around an area and you want to know all the vascular plants within that area, you would want to come here and first deselect lichens, bryophytes, and algae from these collections. And then that way, when you do map searches or generate checklists for area, it's only including vascular plants. So Chico, for example, Chico is managing their lichen data live within the lichen portal, but then we've just set CCH2 up so that it can go to that portal and grab a snapshot of Chico's data on a regular basis. And so that's how these data are set up. It's important to set them up as separate collections, like taxonomically, like we have here. And the consensus was that that doesn't really cause any logistical issues within the CCH2 portal for vascular plants. And so they are there for the time being.
I'd like to make an addition to that. Chico is doing that, but the other, and I'm not sure about Riverside, but I've populated the Rancho Santa Ana California Academy, Catalina Island Conservancy, and pretty soon UC JEPS will have specimens in all three of those. And that's because that Catalina is a small collection, but they included their algae in their distribution. And so we have created, instead of having these be merged in with the vascular plants because they provide a single file, that we are splitting the algae out from theirs, and we're splitting the bryophytes out from the Cal Academy and from RSA, because they also, we get their data from an IPT. And an IPT is a direct connection with their server that's downloaded. And the way they construct that is that all of their collections are in there for their herbarium, including vascular plants and bryophytes, anything, they just have it in one collection. And that's fed into CCH2 as a snapshot, but then we run cleaning tools in order to separate out those collections. And eventually that's the way the UC JEPS will be done. We're in a transitional phase because, and this kind of leads to one of the other issues down on the agenda, is that almost everyone's collections that is here in the CCH have been provided to GBIF in the past through UC JEPS. So what we did was took all of CCH1, converted it to a Darwin core format, provided GBIF with the IPT for all of CCH, and we had an account with GBIF. And that has been taken offline entirely. And that was also how UC JEPS shared our specimens with the world, was through that portal in that setup, merged with everybody else's. And so now we're in the reconstruction step here of recreating the GBIF stuff, and Jen will be talking about what to do next in the Symbioto portal. But with UC JEPS, I'm going to be creating a whole new IPT instance for UC JEPS that includes all of our material that's in our database. And then I will soon have to have those similar kind of filtering structures set up when we harvest UC JEPS with an update, that it will filter out those non-vasculars into the appropriate categories.
Any questions about that? Okay, one other thing we've been talking about is how the CCH2 functions in the long term, particularly after the term of this grant. And
We can't hear you very well, Jen.
I was about to say that.
yeah, how about now?
Kind of, but very soft.
How is that possible?
It
Okay,
depends
now we
how,
can hear you.
Yep. It depends how far you're away from your mic, I think.
I'm gonna eat my computer. Okay. Anyway, people, I've received a number of emails about how the CCH2 will function into the future. And if I could summarize those concerns, it's that now that collections manage their data live, they have a real vested interest in what happens to the portal in the long term. And so our idea that we have talked about as the leadership team of this project is that into the future, we create a steering committee for the CCH that addresses all kinds of issues related to herbarium things in California, but that steering committee will make decisions about the portal. And so if you have an issue or something you want to get on an agenda and have the community vote on and discuss, you would send an email to Jason or I. We would add it to an agenda. The steering committee might meet twice a year or 4 times a year to discuss the issues that have been emailed to the community. And then we would, Greg, can you hear me okay? Okay, Mike's saying yes. But anyway, that we would talk about those issues as a community and then make a decision for how we want the portal to move forward. So in the future, Stacy and I have been scheming on putting together an email that essentially invites everybody who participates in the CCH to be a member of the steering committee. It would be wonderful if there was a representative from each institution on the steering committee. And so that's how we envision the long-term sustainability of the portal into the future. Okay, no questions. Then an issue that actually requires a decision by all of you is regarding rare species data within our portal. So we've gotten several emails from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that tries to use the portal to do searches for rare species. And the way that a Symbiota portal works is there is a list of rare taxa, and when the public searches any taxon on that list, it redacts the locality information. So you can imagine that that has been a problem for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They're trying to figure out where all the rare species have been found in the past. And it's also different from how the CCH1 worked in the past. So in California, we've not redacted locality information at all. So I wanted to give you a quick overview of how that works. If you enter specimen data on your occurrence record, you can click a box that says, hide the locality information for this record. And that will do that. You can also assign people within your collection rare species data access. And as administrators of the portal, we can also assign people global access to rare species data. So I wanted to hear what you guys thought. Do you want to actually hide rare species data from public searches or open it up to everyone? That won't stop you from protecting specific specimen records within your portal. But we just thought we'd put it out there to see what people think about rare species locality information.
So Jen, this is Susan. How is rareness defined? Are these listed species or ones that just have a limited number of specimens? What are the criteria for designating something as rare?
Well, I can't really remember what Ed and I did, but I think currently it's a list of 428 taxa about, And those were probably, Ed, I don't know, we got that list from the red list.
That really depends on you guys, though. Generally, what most portals do, it's they use information that's on red lists, and in SignNet, different states can create their own state-based list too, which are state-based protections. But you guys are all from the same state, so I guess it would be a combination of globally protected stuff and then state-based stuff. But that would be dependent upon you guys to make those decisions.
The eFlora, on a yearly basis, whenever we make our updates, takes the list from the CNPS database. And so when you look at the eFlora, when it says it's listed, that's right from there. And so I would suggest that these taxon names be added when CNPS adds another high category species, that we have that listed, represented on this list if we continue with this particular pattern.
And there's SignNet, there's some species that they add that aren't on these global lists that are wild harvested or collected. There might be some cactus that you might want to put on there that people harvest to sell. So, I mean, it's very flexible what you put on that global list. And then per collection, you guys, as a collection managers, can override that within your collection or add other taxa to it. So there's flexibility all around.
This is Mike Simpson. Would it be possible for, say, a researcher who has good intentions to get permission globally, throughout CCH2 to get localities for a rare taxon that otherwise would be invisible to the public?
You guys would have to give it to them.
So they would have to email Jason, Katie, or I, and we could add them as a rare species viewer across the portal.
That might solve the problem.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think it's important to hide the locations for rare taxa for a variety of reasons, but I think it's also important for people who have a legitimate reason to access that data to be able to do it. And if we clearly post someplace on the website about how to get that access, then that might solve some of those issues.
Okay, is there anybody who's opposed to hiding the locality information for rare taxa and would prefer to have all data freely available?
Sorry. We can't hear you. You're gonna have to. It's I think there's something wrong with your microphone. I think you're gonna have to maybe leave and then come back because your microphone is or call in.
Or just type it in the chat.
Yeah. Because there's something wrong with your microphone. You sound like a chipmunk.
A singing chipmunk.
I think Andy opposes the hiding of those particular plants, and he feels that they should be made available. But it sounds like you guys have plans like that already, if I'm coming through clear. But I think that's what Andy was trying to say, is that that's how he feels. Is that show them and make them available as much as possible with only certain special circumstances of particular sensitive plants.
And Andy and Amy, if the bottom bar of the screen, there's a button that says chat. If you push that, then the chat window will pop up and then you can type whatever you want. Andy, does that summarize your feelings?
I just also want to add that all collection administrators automatically get rights to see the rare data. So they inherit that.
It is a a bummer for researchers. It's just one additional step that you have to go through if you're doing work on rare species, where then you would, you can't, we live in an era where you go onto a data portal and you can just search for things and download data. And that's how many people operate. And so this does put up one obstacle where people would then have to wait. They would have to email us. We would have to add them, and then they would be able to search the portal. And that may be fine, but that is the consequence of that decision.
I have one more question. How does this impact data aggregators who pull from CCH2?
So the data that is masked within each collection, it does not, the locality details will not be published to GBIF. Therell be a field there where it says, was it data?
Redacted, I think.
No, there's another word, data something, but basically it'll be listed there, and it said these fields are being redacted. You have to contact the collection to get those details, locality details.
An example of that is if you did ever done a search on CCH1 and looked for SciNet data. I don't have an account with SciNet, and so I've never been added to their rare species list or anything. So when either Dick Moe or David or I have downloaded data from SciNet, it includes their redacted specimens. So it shows up on CCH1, redacted by the institution, and to contact them.
For instance, if you search ginseng, you won't get ginseng details on SciNet unless you're logged in, a collection administrator, or have explicit permissions to view that data.
Yeah, so then there's some chat conversation about potentially just using the CMPS list 1B plants and hide those data. You could probably make an argument that all Dudleya should be added to that list, given the poaching in California, but that we shouldn't be redacting list 3 or 4 plants. Those are things that we just don't know very much about those plants, or they just have a limited distribution within California, but they're not particularly rare. And that might be a good way to go.
If I could just jump in, given how important this topic is to all of us as conservationists, do we share the data with PG&E or with consulting firm ABC who wants to do a project? Where do you draw the line? Who gains permission? Do we need to talk about that?
Well, currently CCH1 has provided anyone who asks that information, any consultants. Most of them we know, or not me, but Stacy and someone else here at UC Jeps has known who they are and have had made requests before from Dick and everyone. There hasn't really been a situation where someone has asked for, and in CCH1, it's asking for more than 2,000 records because nothing is redacted. So this is a slight different situation for a request here. For just the rare plants. But many of our requests for CCH1 records are for rare plants, mostly for researchers. But there are various consultants, the PG&E and Caltrans and the wildlife agencies and federal agencies, they have all asked CCH1 for data. So you can expect all of the above to be requesting, especially for rare plants.
Jen, maybe this is something we could explore further as part of the steering committee you had just mentioned previously.
Yeah, that was our vision. And so as it stands right now, Katie put a link in the chat to the list of protected species so you can see what it is. So as of right now, they are protected. Again, they don't have to be. We could limit what's on that list or not. And the easiest way forward for the Fish and Wildlife folks is to just give them rare species rights across the portal so that they can access it. And then our thought was that the list of people, or the number of people on that list, could be revisited by the steering committee maybe annually to make sure that the people who have that level of permission we want them to have that level of access.
This is common practice in a lot of other portals. For example, I used to be associated with the Southeastern United States portal, and they had issues with poaching of pitcher plants a lot. So they had redacted Sarracenia data. And for the most part, I think I only heard of one instance when someone didn't allow someone permissions because their story seemed really sketchy. So it does exist that people may be out there for the wrong reasons. And this is a fairly easy way, as long as, like Josh was saying, we have a message clearly there that says locality data is redacted. If you have a reason to be getting to these data for a good reason, contact this person, and it's really not that hard to shoot an email and get those permissions added very quickly.
And Mike, your question was addressed, right? So redacted locality information from CCH2 does not go up to GBIF.
I also like to chime in about CCH1 and how that's going to be handled. So, as you know, that it's pretty much just as is what's in people's database as far as mapping goes is what's shown on CCH1. But since we'll be pulling records from CCH2, we will be having a similar redacting feature for whatever taxa that's on CCH2. They will be done there. However, the eFlora really needs the rare plants to have a map on the eFlora. And so what we're going to be doing is what Mike Simpson suggested, is mapping the rare plants in a more coarse way by modifying the georeferences such that they're not as accurate as they were. And so that on CCH1, you will still see things mapped, but they won't be the more accurate georeferences that are on there. There's also an issue with, well, I have to do that in a way that doesn't create yellow flags, but that's on my end to solve that particular problem. But so if anyone had any questions.
Yeah, that is an interesting point, Jason, which is that because nothing is redacted right now, when you go on, and I'm sure we all love this feature where you can go onto the eFlora and you see the little map and you see all the pins of where everything's been collected, and you can click on the flag and it goes right to the record. And so all of that will change. Okay.
Oh, and I going back to the rare plant thing, we don't on the Jepson eFlora, we don't mark 3 and 4 plants, so it's only 1 and 2 categories that are tracked on the eFlora with a link.
Great. Jason, you want to give a brief update on the status of the CCH2 and the records being updated?
So we've gotten a little bit of the update already. So one of the major issues was the taxon table with CCH1. It's unlike anything else that's here with the eFlora, the ICPN, or CCH2. And so I've had to spend considerable time deconstructing it and reconstructing it. Once it's in CCH2 and I can use it with CCH1, then I can start processing the whole CCH1 website and converting it into a format that's usable, or that can easily use the data from CCH2. Right now, that's just not possible time-wise to make an update to CCH1 using the data in CCH2, because the process is set up to individually take in small data sets, process them, add them to a whole, and then take that whole and process the entire thing. And that is in a text file format, and it's not even a database. So all of the pages that display data have to be rewritten to work with a database. And so that's my next step, is revising and creating the taxon table based on CCH2's data, and then taking a set of data from CCH2, putting it into a new database, and then rewriting all of the code for the search pages and the display pages so that it reads off the new fields. And the goal is by the end of the year to have a usable interface and to be able to do searches and such and mapping. A lot of the features may or may not be in there. There's a lot of changes to people's data, including catalog numbers and such, and to mapping a lot of even just the comments to such that the comments will map to a current record as it is in CCH2 is a tremendous task because of the changes in people's catalog numbers. As it's gone in, and I'm aware of these changes because I've been involved in almost every loading, and I know how they were loaded previously, and I know how they were loaded in CCH2, and I know what the immensity of the task that I have at hand. But the goal is to have all of that data, all of the comments, the old comments, to be mappable to the same records they were before. The comments are turned off, so no one's can add any more new comments in the old format, but they're still usable. People have requested for that to be still visible and to not to go away, so it's not. And in the new interface, when anybody wants to make a comment, there's going to be a link to the CCH2 record so they can apply the comment to the CCH2 record. And that goes so that CCH2 is the depository for all of the comments, whichever website you use.
So a lot of people have commented on how you get you're in CCH2, and so the hope is that that's all reconciled by the end of the year.
And we're adding features to CCH2 that have been in our list of things to add for some time, and we'll be working on that once we work on the current data issue. One of the things that we'll also be continuing to be doing is that there was a very large amount of data correction that was done to the data as it goes into CCH1. And we'll be continuing to do that and producing error reports and provide those error reports to people so that they know when certain counties are misspelled on certain records, or certain names are still misspelled, or the collector's names are there's something wrong with them, that kind of thing. So there will be some differences when you look at the CCH2 record, CCH1 record, and it links to the CCH2 record. There will be some specimens that will have a huge difference between how the data is displayed, and other records will be almost exactly the same. And unless anybody has any other questions, that's pretty much where it stands.
Okay. Anything in the chat? Our grant funds the creation of a thematic collections network, a TCN, and there is a PEN, partners to an existing network grant, and those are where institutions add on to the TCN in later years of the grant. And we were approached by Aaron Liston at OSU, who would like to image his California and California Floristic Province specimens. And so Erin is really excited about doing that. And we thought the best way to pitch that is to very much in the same way that the original consortium grant in later years added the Baja and Oregon piece of the floristic province, that having San Diego add their Baja collection and then OSU add their Oregon floristic province, well, California floristic province of Oregon, records in would be a great way to go. And then there were also some large institutions in California that weren't included in our original proposal, which is the California Department of Food and Agriculture, so CDA, which Genevieve Walden is running now. They have about 27,000 specimens that are undigitized. And then, and also Jason Cantley at San Francisco State has another 20,000 or so specimens that have not been digitized. And so those guys have been moving forward. Just this week, they've started talking about putting that proposal together. The deadline for that is in October. It doesn't really, oh, and it also includes a number of smaller subawards to some institutions in California that have under 10,000 specimens. And so anyway, that seems to be moving forward. Does anybody have any other updates about potential pens? Awesome. So that doesn't really affect any of us other than the CCH2 portal will get bigger if those guys are funded, and we'll have more images and more data. Okay, the next item on the agenda is what everyone should be doing. Oh,
can I ask you a question? So, you mentioned someone in Baja California. Do you have a list of people joining from Baja California?
No, it's just the so the funding has to be used for a U.S. institution.
Okay.
And so my mind just went to the San Diego Natural History Museum as having a large collection of Baja specimens.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
But San Diego State you guys might as well. I don't know what your Baja collection looks like. It's tiny. Okay. Okay. I wanted to, everybody's goal for year 2 is basically to continue imaging. And it seems like everybody is making great progress with that. UC Santa Barbara, you guys are you are a little bit different because you're housing the phenological scoring aspect of the project. And so the only unique detail I have for you, Susan, is that the part-time graduate students supported in years 2 through 4, what we wrote was that they would be creating training materials for the genera, and that we'd do one training workshop in years 2, 3, and 4 for phenological scoring. And so we should have some meetings here in the future about what that looks like and how we want to see that play out.
So he actually won't be funded until year 3 on it. He has a fellowship for this year. Yeah, we can plan, but nevertheless, he expects to be involved in the way you described, so we can plan a workshop here at the Botanic Garden or at Cal Poly.
Awesome.
Maybe during spring break or at the beginning of next summer.
Great. Does anybody have any questions about what they are supposed to do in year 2? Some of you need to pretend like you didn't do as well in year 1.
I have a question. As far as the calendar goes, if next July 31st rolls around and we're still imaging, is that a pretty soft schedule? Because I mean, it's a 3-year total project. So it's, you know, based on availability of resources and such. Is there any big problem if it takes till August or September to complete the 100,000 records? For us, anyway.
Yeah, so the project in total is 4 years long. If you felt like you were running into, and I should say most institutions only have their funding running through years 1 through 3. If you felt like you couldn't get that, I don't know what the logistics are associated with getting a no-cost extension. Usually you can always get them, but I don't know if you need that per institution beyond your budgeted year, or if the whole group needs to do it for the whole 4-year term. So if you feel like, you know, maybe 7 months from now, if you feel like you want an extension, I'll ask NSF how to best deal with that.
Also, our year starts in August. So year 1 started August 1st, and then year 2 just ended at the beginning of this August. So you really have until August 1st of your year 3.
Okay, that's great. That's good to know. Thanks, Caitlin.
Katie, do you want to start talking about some of the upcoming things for next year?
You bet. So we have a couple of pretty good, pretty big pieces of news. One of them is that we are getting ready to publish all of our data into GBIF. And like Jason said, previously in CCH, this was done as a big bulk. So all of CCH data just went into GBIF under the guise of CCH data. But now, to kind of give you guys a little more ownership and control over that, each one of you will be publishing your data individually to GBIF. However, it still happens through CCH2 and it's still automatic. So you don't have to worry about adding extra steps. It's just that you are going to have basically an online GBIF presence on their website. It'll say, this is the collection, this is the data set that belongs to the McFadden Herbarium or UC Jepson or Riverside, for example. So that just requires a little bit of initial investment by you guys. So just keep your eyes open for a document coming from me. Basically, all you need to do is set up that institutional profile for your institution. Then let us know. We'll do a couple of clicks. You have to do a couple of emails, and then you should be set up to just automatically publish your data to GBIF. So just make sure that you're keeping your eyes open for that email so that we can get that set up and you guys can be publishers to the greater data aggregator. And I've got a couple questions about what really is GBIF, what are the aggregators doing with our data, things like that. So I actually connected with Abby Benson, who is a GBIF node manager for North America. And she is being kind enough to host a webinar for us on Wednesday, September 4th at 1 o'clock Pacific time, so 1 p.m. I'll send an email about this as well. And she's going to talk about what GBIF is, what they do, where the data go, who uses the data, all those things that you might want to know about GBIF and the aggregator side. So that's going to be really exciting, and I'm looking forward to hosting her for the CAP group.
Thanks for setting that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks for setting that up. That'll be great.
Yeah, no problem. Any questions about GBIF before I move on? Okay. Second piece of business. So if you'll remember earlier in this year, we got an email from iDigBio saying, hey, by the way, we're not going to host your images on our servers anymore. And we told you, don't worry, we'll figure out a solution. So we have figured out a solution. We're going to be, for those institutions that don't web host their own images, instead of hosting our images on an iDigBio server, we're going to be hosting them through Cyverse, which is another NSF funded but more long-term funded project that is built just for this, for hosting data, for hosting analytical tools, for hosting images and such. This was what the Southeastern Regional Consortium used to web host and actually store like the DNGs of their data, which may not have been a good idea, but the web hosting is really nice. So what we're going to be doing is, instead of using that iDigBio media ingestion appliance that hasn't worked for most of you guys, we're going to set up an alternative workflow where you guys will upload your data to, or sorry, your JPEG images to the Cyverse servers. And that's using a pretty easy tool called CyberDuck. And information about that will also be coming out in a very thorough email once we've got that all set up. And everything's going to link over to CCH2 just as it has been with the iDigBio servers. So another thing just to keep your eyes open for in your emails. Questions about that? All right. Then, as Jen referenced earlier, Symbiota, the CCH2 is going to change a little bit in its appearance because we'll be adding the phenological scoring tools. So I'm going to share my screen actually, and in just a second, and kind of show you what they may look like. They'll look a little bit different than this, but in your data editor control panel, you see there is an option for occurrence trait coding tools. So when I click on that, I can use either of these two tools, and don't worry, tutorials and a webinar will explain these more thoroughly, but they'll be popping up, and then we'll be able to select what traits I want to score. There'll be a new phenological scoring version here. You can select your taxa, and we'll be able to score phenology from that. So just if you see this popping up someday, that's going to be what the difference is. Also, if you open up any old occurrence or data record, there's going to be a new tab called traits, and that's also going to have information about well, it's going to be another way that you can score phenology using CCH2. So look for more information about that coming in the future, but there may be some subtle changes coming to Symbiota because of that.
Katie,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say one part of that that might be of interest to a lot of you who manage live is that all of the phenology data from that traits tab can also be reflected in just that main occurrence page. And that involves the ability to turn on and off some of those fields in the occurrence page so that you can basically and not reflect the things you don't use often. So that's something else that people have asked for.
You cut out for a second.
Ed will be done with it next week.
Or so. Let's see. So moving forward into our future years when georeferencing and phenological scoring is going to be actively done. The phenological scorings and georeferencing, if it's done in the portal, there's just kind of something that we have to think about, that for snapshot collections, obviously those georeferences are not going to go automatically into your home database. So we're going to really have to talk to each other and think about how we're going to work with georeferencing for those of you who are snapshot collections. So we're probably going to georeference the live collections first for that reason, but just know that you should be in contact with us. about that. Okay, and then last thing on my list of updates and things to think about for year 2 is that We Dig Bio is happening in October, so October 17th through 20th. And We Dig Bio is the worldwide engagement for digitizing bio collections. And it's just a big citizen science event that happens from Thursday to Sunday, where there's a big global push to get volunteers involved in transcribing data online. So using notes from nature, using for a lot of different similar notes from nature tasks. So there's one that the Smithsonian has, there's one that the Natural History Museum in France has, Atlas of Living Australia has one as well. So it's kind of a fun international event where you're getting everyone together, learning about biological collections. There are several resources available on the We Dig Bio website that have like games and event planning guides and things like that. If you wanted to hold an in-house transcription party event, which are really fun. They're just a couple hours long. You bring in a bunch of students or CNPS volunteers or master gardeners. Everyone gets a computer. You talk for a little bit amount of time about here are herbarium specimens and here's why transcribing them is important. And then you get them involved in transcribing herbarium specimen data. And that could be really impactful for us in this grant, because we currently have one, but we will soon have several expeditions on Notes from Nature with data from our colleagues up there. So it would be fun if we were involved in We Dig Bio this year and were able to contribute to our colleagues' digitization projects. So I'll also be sending out more information about that, of course, but just so you have that on your radar.
Katie made these great bingo cards and made it a fun game that everybody played last year. So it's a cool outreach event. If you can just reserve a computer lab for a couple hours, then you'll be part of this big thing.
Yeah, you can even do it during a classroom time. If you teach any courses, you can say, all right, today is our biodiversity day. In association with We Dig Bio, we're going to the computer lab, we're learning about biological collections, and then you're off. There are a lot of resources, not developed by me, developed by Austin Mass, Libby Elwood, a bunch of people who were on a We Dig Bio team earlier last year and the year before. So really fun thing to think about and get students involved, and maybe get some more students who are interested in biological collections and who might be interested in volunteering at the herbarium. So plug there. Oh yeah, Katya is noting that their students, they did it 2 years ago, and students chatted with several other museums while digitizing. So I know that in the past years, they've had like video conferencing with people in other places who are doing digitization as well. So that's pretty fun.
Katie, so where do the images come from for that scoring, for the We Dig Bio scoring?
Those are whatever platform you decide to use. So it's not We Dig Bio specific. We just used Notes from Nature when we did it.
Okay, thanks.
And Susan, we have active Notes from Nature expeditions. So those images would come from CSU LA or Fresno or wherever Josh is, Northridge.
Fullerton.
Fullerton, I forgot.
Yeah, there's currently a Fresno expedition up, but soon a Fullerton expedition will be going up, probably another Long Beach expedition, an Irvine expedition. We're going to be popping up all over the place. Take your pick.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, any questions about any of those exciting updates? As always, look for emails from me. That's kind of the the gist.
Katja asked about who's going to the iDig Bio Summit. And Katja, as far as I know, only Katie and I are going. And I don't know of any updates or highlights as of now.
Okay.
Are you going?
Yeah, I'm going, and I'll be, I don't know what you call them, a symposium or workshop or whatever, but leading a group on biotic interactions there, if anybody is interested.
Cool.
Awesome. Katie and I don't know if we're organizing, but we were talked into doing a education and outreach session. So to talk about things that have worked well and things that have not worked. Not presented solely by us, but we'd have a bunch of speakers in that session.
Lightning
Great.
talks.
Yeah, I guess that's the format this year, is a lot of lightning talks, it sounds like.
Which kind of sounds nice. Maybe we'll learn a lot of things really quickly.
Absolutely. A lot of projects to hear from.
Yeah.
So Mike and Andy, you guys have the next note, which says, can the interface to the images be streamlined through the internet? You think it's a bit difficult to access and not user-friendly. And can you explain that issue a little bit more?
Andy, do you want to address that on how you felt about the interface? Oh, I don't think their microphone isn't working. I think that you probably guys are already addressing it because you're talking about updates to the websites, but we were just, some general feedback that we were getting was that it was a little difficult to find where the images were in relationship to what we've been posting up there. I've been able to find them, and I mean, they're there and they work well, but I think Andy felt that there could be some improvement to shorten the clicks or the screens to be able to get to them. And I know you were talking earlier about maybe some changes to the website and maybe making it a little easier to access for the general public. So, yeah, anything you could do to show Andy on the screen share there, the fastest way to get to what he's looking for now, which is the images.
Yeah, I guess if I just went from home and search collection. So this is what, I'm not signed in to the CCH2. I'm just a general person on the internet. And if I just keep everything selected and I say search, for upon what you, I guess, oh, that's funny. It depends upon what you're looking for, but there's also this image search tab here. And so this will, if you care only about records that have images associated with them, you can get them all that way, and it will show you all the sheets that have the images.
Can you show us just how quickly it would be to get to just looking at UCR herbarium?
Go to sitemap, and then go to image contributors, and then it lists all the images based on who submitted them, but also by institution. So if you click on that, it'll open up the search tool primed.
I guess it's a little hard to know what, how to give you advice there without knowing what your goal is.
Yeah, I understand that. I know Andy could probably explain it a little easier if he had with the microphone, or maybe it's being texted. But I think what we can do is probably do that offline and discuss it, and figure out the most efficient way to be able to get to the data, and then just document that.
We could
So-
add this link to the specimen metadata page.
The other thing that you might find useful is that when you log in, like if I went to UC Riverside as, okay, so now here's what it looks like for you guys.
Mhm.
If you were to edit existing records and just here, I'm displaying a table with, these are all of your records. So you have a bunch with no data, but so here's all your records in a table format.
Mhm.
When you click on any given record, if it has an image associated with it, it often pops up right here to the right.
You
And
could go back to the search and there's a button there that says display only images.
great.
Just,
Yeah,
yeah,
with image.
yeah, there.
So here's a table that's going to show you the table form of all the specimens that have images. And if you were to click on any one of those, your image pops up right here next to all the data associated with it. And you can also access that from the images tab, which gives you some of the metadata associated with those images.
Yeah, that seems pretty straightforward to me. I'll let Andy text if he still needs any questions. But yeah, that seems reasonable to come in that way and select just the imagery if that was something we wanted to focus on at that point for.
So Jen, could you go back to the editing page with an image just real fast?
Okay.
If that image isn't being displayed to the left, you need to click on that little symbol that's up in the upper right. It's a two arrows that's just to the right of the Dupes button. Yeah, so that toggles that little frame to go in and out.
Okay. Yeah, it's certainly manageable and doable, but it's not completely self-evident like you're going to shop on Amazon or something, But I think with a little bit of working on it, it's certainly the data's there, and you get quicker the more you become familiar with the site, I guess. But yeah, that's good. That was a good example right there. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of you that I talk to, there's sort of two different ways of getting to the data in the portal. Some people always go this way, search collections, and then they select their collections. I personally never go that way. I always go into my collection sort of from the back end, and I am always using this edit existing occurrence records button. So I do all of my searches from this search box. And so this is where, if I just cared about all of the records that I have, here they all are. And obviously you'd filter that based on taxa or collector or something. But this is how I access my own database most frequently.
That's good. I'm familiar with that access. That's good. It's a good shortcut.
But Jen, can you map doing that? I mean, doing the your own profile interface, because I'll often want to see a map, and it seems the only way to do that is a general search. Or am I missing something?
Ed?
Map search.
Map.
You want me to share my screen?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Oops. Uh-oh, you have too many windows open, Ed.
That's nothing. 4 windows is nothing. Usually it's like 15. All right, there's a map search option here. And that allows you to, let's say you want to do all Pinus. I don't know, that might be a lot, but let's see. There are limits to how many points you could display in this map. Oh, there's some Pinus that are popping up in China, so.
That's a negative sign on the, oh no, it's actually China.
Oh, it's actually China, so
Yeah.
maybe I should go back and adjust my results
Filtered a little bit.
and say United States. If I could spell. All right. So let's see if this works better. All right. Yeah, so it's a little bit better. Oh, we're still getting Hawaii in there. Sorry. One more time. Let's go California. All right. So now this will probably be better.
So, and Mike Simpson, I was asking if you go to your personal herbarium profile and do searches for a group, can you map from that?
We could add links to this, because here you could say you just want your collection.
But currently, no.
And we could add dynamic links where you push a button, it'll automatically prime this form with your data. And that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, I mean, that's how I normally map, just doing a search for whatever herbaria I want. Jen was pointing out that she usually does searches through her profile.
But never with a map.
Yeah, so you can't map that way, and it would be nice to be able to.
Well, you can map through the menu items, but yeah.
Sure.
And then through this map, you could also color based on taxa.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to see which ones.
Yeah.
So all these tools are available, and you could do it just for your collection.
Sure. Okay.
Ed, will you do a general public search? Just do a search for a list of taxa from the main search page. So it looks like Amy and Andy in the text box have said, like, when people search in the CCH2, is it obvious that there's an image associated with that record?
If you do to the general search.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So within here, sorry, this thing's in my. There is a button down here where you could say limit to images. Gosh, this thing, I can't get rid of it. Actually, I could limit that. There we go. Okay. So you could say limit to images. And anytime you do a search, yeah, it'll show the thumbnail of the image. For instance, here. And here there is an image, but since it's protected, it's not displaying it. So if I was logged in, it would display the image. But yes, there's thumbnails right there. And then if you click on full details, it will show you the image. Is that what they were asking?
Yeah, I think Andy's going to email me if there are additional questions.
Okay, well, we are right on 3:30, and let me just check our agenda to make sure that Mike will talk to you more about authorship offline.
Good idea. Better do it offline.
Okay, well, everyone.
Heated topic.
Yeah.
So as far as like adding links to here, I could add a link that takes you directly to the images for your collection in the image explorer thing. The problem with the mapping thing is you can't map all your specimens within the map because there's a limit to the Google Maps before they crash your browser. So, but there's other tools, there's other things I might be able to here. There's a distribution buttons. And here I could put a little map symbol, and that could take you if the numbers aren't too high.
So many ways of accessing these data.
There's a lot of different ways to access data, but there's so many different ways people want to access data.
Yes.
So it's hard to, part of it is I suggest that you just become a super clicker, and on all these pages, just totally explore the different ways to access your data, and I bet you'll find ways that satisfy your needs. But
Don't
if
be
not,
afraid to click.
we could expand those possibilities.
Fantastic. Okay, well, everybody, thank you for hanging out for so long and for our year one full meeting conference call. And then look for more emails from Katie in the future.
And if you have any more questions, feel free to stick around. Katie, Jen and I will still be here for a couple more minutes. But anyone else is feel free to sign off.
Except
nice
for you
to see you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.